it was the intensity of it. You'd be talking 6 attacks a day, of which multiple would be complex attacks. And for the uninitiated, complex attack is multiple different types of weapon systems, multiple flanks, anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. Those engagements could last minutes, or they could last, upwards up to an hour. It's a different beast when you are completely at the mercy of the enemy. There was nothing we could do to suppress them other than shoot back.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we hear a combat story from our brothers across the pond with a veteran and sniper from the UK's elite Parachute Regiment, or Paras, Hugh Keir. Hugh deployed to Iraq twice, Afghanistan 3 times, in addition to Northern Ireland and the Falklands. You survived the infamous siege of Musa Qala. You'll be fascinated to hear about this experience, and it will make you appreciate just how brutal fighting can be at times, where he and his unit were infilled into a terrible fighting position in Afghanistan, completely surrounded by the Taliban. He was also recognized with a Gallantry Award for his actions in Helmand Province in 2008 in just one of his several Afghan deployments. Since leaving the military, he has worked as a close protection officer in the Middle East and in the UK, and is the host of the H-Hour podcast, a long-form conversation with guests that include politicians, actors, psychologists, UFC fighters, authors, campaigners, veterans, and more. I hope you enjoy this deep dive from our close partners over in the UK as much as I did. Hugh, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story with us.
Thanks for the invite. I'm excited to chat with you, Mike.
Just a little joke between us right before we hit record. You and I were just laughing. It's way easier to be the host on these. You and I have done many interviews of other people, and I never envy being the person on the receiving end. So thank you for jumping into that seat for us.
No problem. Keeps me on my toes when I'm interviewing as well.
Yeah. Hey, just for people who aren't watching, you might just be listening. Behind you, you've got a framed image. I was just wondering if you could speak to what that was as we get started here.
Yeah, that is a painting of a gentleman who's no longer with us. A guy called it's Brian Budd, who he was killed. He was part of the three para. Before that, he was Pathfinder's elite reconnaissance platoon within 16 Air Assault Brigade in the British Army. Came from there to 3 para in 2006 to come on our first tour of Afghanistan in Helmand Province, and was unfortunately very sadly killed during some fighting there in Sangin Province. But he earned a Victoria Cross in the process. And it's a painting depicting his final moments storming a Taliban position. Yeah.
Do you know, like, how do you go about getting somebody to make something like that? I mean, it's a beautiful looking rendering.
Yeah, it's good. The unit commissioned a well-known military painter over here who does a lot of commissions to make the painting. So unfortunately, we prefer to have them of people who are still around, or depict battles which were very prominent in the history. But every so often, the worst happens to good people, and you commission one to commemorate them.
Yeah. All right. Look, we don't often interview folks from across the pond. So can you give us all an idea, kind of, where do you grow up in the UK? And for people who just don't know those areas, what's it like? What's the that part of town like for all of us?
UK, yeah. So I am from Wales. I'm Welsh, and Wales is, as a little, for those who think the UK is England. The UK is actually a bunch of different countries, right? And Wales is a small country on the west border of England. Scottish father, Irish mother. There's no English in my blood that I'm aware of, right? It's pure Celt. For me, the English, the invaders. The English came from Scandinavia. They invaded the UK when it wasn't called the UK. It kicked the Celts into what is now known as Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. We never forgive them. So I'm from Wales, South Wales, and Wales is mainly famous for its diabolical weather and its beautiful mountains and beautiful countryside. So I grew up on a farm there in South Wales. My parents weren't farmers. They rented a house, like a 500-year-old house, stone house, on a farmer's land,
Wow.
intending to be a short-term thing, like 6 months. We'll stay there while they were trying to find places nearer to where they work, because they both moved jobs, and we ended up staying there like 10 or 11 years. So I grew up in the countryside. The nearest neighbor was 4 miles away, and it was me, my parents, my young sister, the sheep and the cows, a couple of horses. And then when I got a bit older, it was a weapon.
Were you working on the farm? Like, was your parents? What were they?
I didn't. No, I didn't. We were literally just sort of we were dwellers on the farm. I would go out and help out in the winter or in the summer with the farmers. We knew them because we were renting the property for them. Go out in the winter and or in the spring and go help lambing. When the sheep were giving birth, go and help the sheep which had problems. In summer, go and get the hay in the winter. I don't remember doing much in the winter, and that's probably by choice because it was horrific. It was just horrific. Regularly snowed. And that was the only bonus, not the only bonus. It was one of the bonuses of living there. Is that regularly for the winter we get snowed in. Literally couldn't get out of the house. Couldn't get to off the mountain. To never mind to get to the school. So South Wales, where I grew up, beautiful place. I love it. I live in England now. I live like a 35-minute train ride from London, from the centre of London, which is very, very different. Very, very different. Took a lot of adjustment to adjust to city life as opposed to mountain life,
I'm sure you get this a lot, and you're going to hate me for asking it, but a lot of us will know Wales recently from Wrexham, from the show. I don't know.
From the show?
Yeah. Have you seen or heard of Welcome to Wrexham? Ryan Reynolds buys this.
I haven't. But I know Ryan Reynolds owns the football club.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, I will say this about Wrexham for you. The people haven't been there. I'm assuming that I don't know what's on that show, but does it give any insight into the town?
Tons.
Oh, it does. Okay.
I mean, it does it justice. Like it shows what it's like living in Wrexham.
I need to have a look at that then, because where I grew up in the south, because Wrexham's in North Wales, and North Wales, the difference between North Walians and South Walians, they're like aliens to us. They're weirdos, and I think we're weirdos, and sort of in the middle of the country is the real Welsh people who, as they would call themselves, who they consistently speak Welsh. English is a lot of their second language, Welsh is their first language. South is very different. South is much more cosmopolitan. I don't know a better phrase. No, that is totally the wrong phrase, right, for Wales. But relative to mid Wales and North Wales, I say, right, there's cities in the south. Okay, there's like a motorway. You don't get any of that north, right? But where I grew up in South Wales was the nearest town. So I grew up in the valleys of Wales, inland, and the nearest town outside of the valley is a place called Neath. Neath used to be regarded as one of the most violent nights out you could have in Europe at one point. It was just terrible. And that's early noughties, late 90s. Now, I visited Wrexham maybe 5 years ago for the first time ever. And I made Neath look like central London. It just, it is like a different level. It's a different level. I was like, this is, the only people I think who love Wrexham are the people who live there and have never thought of leaving, never will leave. The whole family has lived there. People visit in, they don't stay very long. But kudos to Ryan Reynolds for buying it. I mean, I assume the football team's doing well.
They're doing well, and they really, I will say, for that town, they've probably done a heck of a lot for it. And for the Americans who have seen it, I'm sure they'll know. But it is a good show. It's entertaining, and it's a good exposure. They go through some Welsh customs and whatnot.
Yeah, food. They're entertaining people. They're a bit close to the border for most Welsh people's liking. But, there's a correct side of the border, at least. Yeah.
So you talked about your folks. Sounds like you grew up in a rural area. Were your parents former military? Like, what got you into that?
No. I had. There was. My father wasn't military. My mother wasn't military. None of their siblings were military. Like my mother is actually Irish, so as in the Republic of Ireland. Ireland's split into the Republic of Ireland, which is proper Ireland, and you've got Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. And she grew up in just outside Dublin, and we used to go visiting there at least twice a year when I was young. And there's IRA members in extended family, definitely friends of the family. It actually led to my joining up process to join the British Army at the time took a lot longer. For the vetting had to be a lot longer. There were names that we had to leave off the list of the family trees. We put it in. So, we don't
need to talk. We
don't mention your Auntie Cora. We don't mention your Auntie Cora. Okay, we don't mention your Auntie Cora. I actually she lost a few friends when I joined up, as in kind of stopped speaking to her. But no, not military. I think I got a great uncle who was military, but we're talking Second World War and national service after that, and the national service stopped in the 50s. So no, I suppose that leads on to what was my drive to join, if that's the case.
Yeah.
It was. I describe it as, now understanding it, as I was trying to sort of just prove myself to myself. I was the polar opposite of who I am now. For some reason, I do try and understand it. For some reason, when I was growing up, I had really low self-esteem. I had really low self-confidence. I was very clingy with my parents. And yeah, I would class myself as like a sort of a weak character. And I don't mean that like negative aspects of character. I just wasn't a strong person. A weak personality. Then a weak personality is a better way to describe it. I'm not sure what that is. I think growing up where I grew up played a big part in it. I had very little sort of social development compared to anyone else. I finished school, and I'd cycle home or walk home, and then I'd be at home on my own. My sister was a few years younger at the time, and when 3 or 4 years younger when you're 15, that's a lifetime younger. Yeah. There's no, so everyone else would be out meeting their friends and whatever, socializing after school, and before school, walking to school with each other and stuff like that. And on the weekends, I had none of that. I think that played a part because my social skills didn't develop until much later. It took a lot of work. I ended up. The one thing I was good at, I was fit, and I was good at rugby. Playing rugby. Rugby's a huge sport in Wales, and I was fit, running fit. Like from the waist down, I was really fit. From the waist up, there was nothing there. I was just skin and bone, as you would have for like a middle distance runner. I think at one point in college, so it would have been when I was about 17, I started getting aspirations to join the RAF, the Royal Air Force, and as I recall, the only reason I thought of that was we were doing like a career lesson. Hey, start thinking about what you might want to do. This is in school, though, the year before. Start thinking about what you might want to do when you leave. And I wanted to be an engineer, I think. Didn't know what engineer meant. It was just like, oh, okay. Sounds cool. They do important stuff, maths and shit. And we were looking through a career booklet, and there was something in there that said something about avionics or aviation engineer in the Royal Air Force. And I thought, I'll join the Royal Air Force. You know what it's like when you're young. You're so flippantly, yeah, cool. That sounds good. I'll just do that. So the intent was to go to college and get A levels, and then join the RAF as an engineer, I suppose. Didn't quite work out like that. I wasn't the most academic in school. I think as my social skills started developing, I kind of developed in the wrong way. I became the mess around, the joker a little bit. It was kind of the only way I would get like positive interaction, because I was super ginger. I was super skinny. My social skills were bad. I was just a farm boy. Everyone had the latest, coolest trainers and bag, and I would just have. I think my dad had actually given me it was a very old, maybe 1950s military backpack. I think it was a German thing, like a canvas thing. Everyone's going to school in Nike backpacks. I think I'm going in this German thing. So I became like a bit of a joker, and academic went downhill a little bit. I got enough to go into college, to get into college, but I don't know what it's like in the States, but here the difference between school, and college. In terms of how the teachers, lecturers motivate you is very different. When you're in school up to the age of about 16, you're pushed. It's like, hey, you do your work, you do your homework, you do your coursework, or you should get in detention. You're staying behind after school, you're getting punished. When you go into college, there's none of that. It's expected to self-motivate. I had zero self-motivation. I'd also discovered the pub, and I'd also discovered a certain group of friends who liked the pub. So we'd disappear off as we could go to the pub, 16, 17 years old. And that's how it went. At the same time, I was being productive in computing. I was taking an A level in computing, and one of the A levels, and I was spending my time in the class with a friend of mine. Actually, is now in LA, and we were. This is 98, yeah, 98, late 98. And we built a website, which was no, there was no WordPress or
you had to actually do it.
It was proper coding it. But yeah, it was neathcollegesucks.co.uk, and we were in Neath College, and we'd done it anonymously. We thought I was the one who would set it all up, and we would sort of build this out. And it was, it was like just a fun website. We make some comments about the college and make some jokey stuff. And we had a guest book. Do you remember guest books on the old website?
At a hotel or something?
Yeah, but on the website, back in the day, you go on a website, and if you wanted to interact with us, like leave a comment or whatever, it was in a guest book, and you have to go into there. Well, the students started leaving comments, and they weren't being very nice. They were like being really awful things about some of the lecturers. But it turns out we hadn't covered our tracks very well because we were brand new to this internet stuff, and they got hold of my IP address, and I called in and said, "You need to leave the college before we kick you out." I said, "Okay, I'm going." Wow. I wasn't going to get my A levels anyway. That was coming up to the second year. I wasn't doing enough to get them. Okay, I'm leaving. So that put the RAF idea out the window. Yeah, I was still proud of that website, And
you should be. Yeah, I feel like you were onto something. You had customers.
Yeah. About the same time, there was a military recruitment advertisement going, I think, on the television, on TV, and it said, "Come and spend 24 hours with the Paras," and you'd phone up, "Hey, I want to come and spend 24 hours with the Paras and see what it's like." And so I went and did that with a friend of mine. He managed to stay in college, but his dad was ex-military, and he'd always wanted to join up. So we went down together to spend 24 hours with the Paras, and we went down to a place called Aldershot, which is it's still now regarded as the home of the British Army in the UK. It's sort of a dated home of the British Army now. It's like a larger version of Wrexham, right? But in England, it's horrible. We went down there, but basically for 24 hours, we got shown all the shiny stuff that the military have and the Paras have, and we got shown all the cool stuff. We got to do some weapon handling. We got to do some basic fitness tests, and we did like a 1.5 mile run and these things and this various stuff. Hey, look how cool the Paras are. Come and join us. None of the bad stuff, obviously. And I was completely sold. I was completely sold on it.
Yeah.
And then I went home and told my dad I was going to join up. At this point, he didn't know I'd dropped out of college. So I told him both things at the same time. Yeah. It was a dad. I've left college, but hear me out. And
good news.
And he said, yeah. I think I kind of guessed that because you haven't been for like 6 weeks. I said, but I really need you to help train me because I want to join the Paras. And I was appealing to his pride. Yeah, I'll train you. Shug. Like Scottish people say, Shug is like slang for Hugh. Stuff. I don't know why. He said, I'll train you, Shug. Yeah, so I got away with getting an absolute bollocking off him for leaving college because he was
well played.
I think he was impressed at the idea of me trying to join the Paras at the time, of which I didn't know much. He must have known more than I did.
I got to say, that sounds like a pretty brilliant recruiting scheme. But when you were in the Paras, did you end up having to do one of those? Like where you had, because I got to imagine if you're in the Paras, you're like, oh my God, we got these people off the street coming in and they're going to get weapons and we got to deal with them for 24 hours?
No, I didn't do that. So we have obviously recruiting teams and recruiting officers. It's changed a bit now, but the recruiting team is not somewhere you want to go, really. You'd either go there if for some reason your progress is being stunted or slowed for some reason.
Yeah.
Injury, ability, or for other reasons, like for compassionate reasons. You can't afford, you can't be away a lot. The recruiting teams they can, depending on where you're based, can be quite steady. Good home life sometimes, other times not. So no, I didn't go into that. I'm glad as well. As well. Because at the time I joined in 2000, and it was a real quiet time for us in the UK, the West as well. I think Cold War sort of had come to an end. Gulf War One had happened in 1991.
Yeah.
91, sorry. And we had bits and bobs in the UK. I've been involved with Kosovo, Bosnia, much of the same stuff the US was involved with, but nothing major. And it was all getting a bit stagnant. I joined in 2000. Obviously, we know what happened in 2001. And then the rest was just madness.
For the US audience, give us a rundown of the paras. Like, I think for those in the military community, we've got a pretty good idea. But for people listening who maybe aren't as familiar, how should an American audience associate them with kind of U.S. forces, if there's a good analogy?
Yeah, I think, previously we'd say airborne unit, right? But I think an airborne unit, I think certainly in the US, has lost the meaning. To me, an airborne unit is paratroopers.
Yeah.
I think over in the US now, airborne unit is classed as airborne assault as well, right? And not exclusively paratroopers.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the 82nd kind of paratroopers. 101st would be more like air assault, but I feel like the paras are even a little more advanced, almost like Rangers to some degree.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I say that's more accurate. Yeah, so the paras they're the airborne infantry of the British Army, and they're we. Oh, I was. I can say we. It's the only infantry unit. In fact, it's the only unit in the British Army, barring Special Forces and the Pathfinders, who have a selection process. So, we were formed in 1940 was the order came through to form the unit, but it was designated as shock troops. Everything we know what paratroopers are used for and great for now is shock troops behind enemy lines, and so Churchill had seen the Germans and the Russians had sort of developed the methodology. The Germans had first done it operationally, jumped, and then they went, no, this is a bit mental. We're losing too many troops, so we need to rethink this. And Churchill went, sounds great. I'll have a bit of that. So, and formed what became the Parachute Regiment. So now what we are is what we are today. A relatively short history from the 40s, but say a pretty illustrious one, nonetheless. Yeah, that's the thing in the UK. We have units which are just hundreds of years old. It's wild. You see the customs and things you see, and the Parachute Regiment does get those old and bold units. They do like to say, well, you haven't been around very long. You've got very little history, but there's advantages to that.
Just a quick word from our sponsor, Mint Mobile, which helped make this possible. 2025 is here, and Mint Mobile has a resolution for you. Skip the gym, skip the fad diet, skip the BS resolutions you'll forget about by next month. Instead, make a resolution to save some serious cash by making the switch to Mint Mobile. And right now, you can get half off their 3-month unlimited plan. We just took a trip to a remote part of California, and you know which phone plan worked for us? Mint Mobile, and at a fraction of the cost. It's time to leave your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, unexpected overages, and all their BS in 2024. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your current phone and your phone number. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile. It's so easy. Sign up online and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. Switch to Mint, and new customers can get half off an unlimited plan until February 2nd. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/combatstory. That's mintmobile.com/combatstory. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Thanks again for listening to this special edition of Combat Story.
Yeah. There's lots of crazy uniforms and ceremonies and stuff we don't have to do.
Nice.
But they do. But so that's who we are today. Very much the same. Today we have 4 battalions, and a battalion, so a regular battalion is around about 600 strong, fully manned, with some attachments on as well, to bolster the numbers on top of that. Of the 600, almost all of those will be paratroopers. And the main 3 regular battalions are 1, 2, and 3 para. 1 para recently, relatively recently, they went in and formed part of the Special Forces Support Group, which is a unit combined of Parachute Regiment, Marines, and some RAF regiment. But the core of it is 1 para guys Parachute Regiment, who support SAS, SBS on operations, and 2 and 3 para are the other units, and the guys rotate basically between. We try and rotate between 2 para, 3 para, and SFSG. Yeah, so that's who we are today. A very very capable regiment. But I think with any unit of that ilk, any unit of selection of which is perceived to be elite, which is an elite unit, it comes with its problems, like people's perception of them, all arrogant and all the rest of it. And but in general, it is a very formidable unit, I think, and we pride ourselves on that selection process.
The individual who kind of suggested that I reach out to you, said he had served with you, and he said that I needed to ask you about your selection, that you were singled out, I think, by a corporal during the selection process. Does this ring a bell or no?
Oh, I think he may be referring to, I think when I was in the second phase of my training, so our training is split down into, this is generally for British soldiers, is split down into either 2 or 3 phases. So phase 1, everyone does phase 1, everyone, if you join the British Army. And phase 1 is the real basics, how to be a soldier, the real basics. Fire a weapon, pass your basic weapon handling test, learn basic tactics, learn drill, learn how to press your uniform, learn your field skills and military knowledge and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Phase 2 is in your more specified training. Phase 2 for us, for infantry in general, is more infantry stuff, more advanced, different kinds of ambushes, different kinds of patrols and OPs and all of that, all of those things. And then phase 3, if people do it, is for what we would call your corps, your engineers and your signalers, things that are highly technical, and they just need more time in school to try and learn it. My phase 2 and my phase 1 were actually taught by different instructors. So the Parachute Regiment, throughout all of the training, we only get taught by other paras. That's mainly the case for everyone who joins the paras. They've been taught by other paras. Other units are not the same. Other units, if you're going to join, I don't know, for example, the Welsh Guards or the Royal Irish, your training staff, when you train to they could be from any unit. With us, it's different. We only paras train paras. And when I moved into phase 2, I think this is what he's referring to. I've alluded to it a couple of times. We were actually talking about violence and corporal punishment, should we say, and the place of it. In my phase 2, I had a particularly violent instructor when I was in phase 2, and he particularly didn't like me.
Why? Because you're Welsh or what?
No, that probably played a part in it, although he never mentioned it. He was English. But no, I think you could smell a bit of weakness. I mentioned to you what I was like before I joined, and that doesn't just all of a sudden disappear when I joined. I was trying to build myself up, and training in a training environment in the military, regardless of whichever you join, particularly in infantry, is designed to break you down. Like, there wasn't a lot there to break down on me, and I think through nervousness or weak-mindedness, I just sometimes wasn't up to the scratch. I'd made basic mistakes. That could be leaving, not putting enough of the socks in my bergen. Yeah, hey, make sure your kit's got 5 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of this, blah, 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 whatever. And if there was one down, well, you're going to get punished for that. If you make enough mistakes, then you'll get punished more. He was not afraid of punishing me with his fists, and he would do it. And the more, so the more mistakes were made, the faster that kind of punishment would come, the shorter its fuse. Now, I'm not totally against that kind of punishment. I am who I am today, partly because of that. Well, I don't think so. I think it could have been handled a bit better. Yeah, it is what it is. It was a particularly difficult time. Did not enjoy it. I mean, you're not meant to enjoy it. Yeah. But my phase 1 was pretty relaxed, to be honest. Phase 1 for me was pretty relaxed. A combination, because it is easier. You turn in civilians into soldiers. You're not turning soldiers into infantrymen or paratroopers. You're turning civilians into soldiers. And the training staff I had then, which were different, they were pretty relaxed. It
Yeah.
almost painted like a false picture of what the second phase would be like. And the second phase not only was different staff, it was a different place. We went from a location called Lichfield in near Birmingham, like the West Midlands in England. Not too hilly, the weather's not bad. Phase 2 was further up north into England, and the further north you go in England, the worse the weather gets till you get to, like Middle Earth, which is Scotland. And then the training staff changed, and they were just ruthless. I mean, you can be in the same training establishment. One group of instructors can be
totally different.
One sort of culture. You go next door to the next barracks or accommodation, whatever. Then those instructors could be night and day different to them.
Yeah,
and they produce totally different results if they're handling the wrongs. If they're matched up wrong with the wrong recruits.
Yeah. So, and I know, I mean, you deploy a lot in your career, and you mentioned, this is 99, 2000. Obviously 9/11 happens not long after that. But I think from what I had seen, you do a few rotations to Northern Ireland, which you had alluded to earlier.
Yeah, like the first place I went was Northern Ireland. Yeah, so and that surprised me. I mean, when I think about that now, we think of terrorism these days as being this far away, not far away. It comes from far away.
Yeah,
there's people with different color skin to ours. They speak different languages. They look different. They dress different culture. And in my lifetime, and in fact, because I was involved in it operationally, we literally had it on home soil. On home soil. So I deployed to Northern Ireland in that was the first tour, end of 2001, very late 2001. It was Christmas, and there wasn't a lot going on then. The Good Friday Agreement had been signed years before. So it was almost like a winding down of British troops in Northern Ireland, but it was still active. But there were certain areas there where our intelligence services would use it as a training ground now for new operatives. But we still had to have a presence there. But not a lot was going on at all. It was a pretty bleak. I'm not a big fan of Northern Ireland in general.
But what about your family history? Like, as you kind of described, family in Republic of Ireland. Yeah, you're in Northern Ireland. Like, was there any challenge?
I know at least one person close to my mother who completely cut her off when they found out that her son had joined the British Army. Never mind the Paras. The Paras have got a real bad name in Ireland. Real bad name. Not popular at all. Like the most hated unit out there. Maybe with the exception of 14 or DET, what it was called, which is our intelligence service over there. And that's because there's a relatively famous incident in the 70s where there were 13 civilians alleged civilians killed by Parachute Regiment soldiers in what became a heated riot, and there was alleged to have been shots fired, and then all hell broke loose and 13 civilians dead at the end of it. And the Parachute Regiment was the unit on the ground at the day. It caused uproar for a long time. There was inquiries going on into late 90s, early 90s about it. And yeah, so as I said, at least one person plus my mother deserted her, and I actually ended up having. There was a couple of brothers I grew up with because as I said, I used to go visit over in Ireland, and we'd have family and friends come over and visit us in Wales. And there was a couple of brothers who would come over about my age, and one of them went on to produce, been at the TV and film, and he went on to produce a very damning docu-film about Bloody Sunday. That was in the noughties, maybe 04, 05 or something like that, and that kind of made it even worse. But in the tour itself, in Ireland, like I said at the time, it wasn't the nicest place to go and do anything, patrol, do anything at all. And it was also strange because, like I said, these people they're white British, although they look white British. Some of them would not call themselves British. white British who looks the same as towns and cities in the UK. It was a very odd place to be. I actually, when I went out there twice, I went back out in 2004 after the invasion of Iraq. I went back out in 2004 before what's called marching season. So it's obviously a very religiously orientated country, as is Ireland. The Irish are just very, as is Scotland. And in the summer, there's like a 6-week period where they have what's called marching season, and it's where the religious communities go out and they do these formal marches, religious marches and ceremonies and processions through streets and stuff. And they have routes that they've always traditionally, historically gone and marched these routes, and over time the routes become divided, in terms of sectarianism. They get divided, and all of a sudden a route that 2 years ago was almost entirely, or 10 years ago was entirely Protestant, 5 years later maybe could be Protestant Catholic. And
wow,
the Catholics may not want some processions coming through that are nothing to do with Catholics, or vice versa. And so we went back out for marching season 2004, and so it was pretty tasty. It was pretty tasty. I've got a friend and he got snatched into the crowd. He got snatched out of the line into the crowd, and he's a small lad. He's like, I don't know, he's a boxer. He's like 70 kilos. There's nothing to him. What's that? Like 150 pounds, 160 pounds. I mean, he's a formidable man. I wouldn't want to fight the guy, right? Because I know he can box, but he just got grabbed out. A young private just grabbed out the crowd, and there was a platoon sergeant who ended up going. He was disappearing at the crowd. He was going to get lynched at worst, or just absolutely battered and end up in hospital. And they managed to rescue him back out. And they in that riot, it was completely underestimated in terms of strength and the aggression and the anger of what was a protest turned into a riot. And it was a company of guys, like 90, 100 paratroopers, got almost completely overrun. They got into the back of the armored vehicles. I got another friend who was fighting off a guy in the back with the guy with a hammer, and he was a driver. My friend was a driver. The guy coming in inside with a hammer. They'd rip the doors off. That was 2004.
Yeah,
not that long ago. It's on home soil. It's crazy when you think about it. Because that was at the same time we were starting to fight the overseas terrorist threat. We were still dealing with it at home.
And you mentioned, you do Northern Ireland. I think you do a stint maybe in the Falklands. You do Iraq. You do Afghanistan. Where's the first time you find yourself in a firefight?
Firefight would have been Afghanistan, 2006. My first time being shot at, if you want to say that, was artillery, and the invasion of Iraq was artillery incoming from the Iraqis in the Ramala oil fields, just in the south, just near Basra. You probably know of that area. And we'd moved across the border from Kuwait we were doing the invasion. We were going in on vehicles, though we didn't jump in. We went in on vehicles, and we were slowly moving through the oil fields up the central road. I can't remember the name of the route that is, but it's irrelevant anyway. But as we were moving up on a day-by-day basis, we'd go firm, we'd dig shell scripts or dig trenches. In fact, I rephrase that, we'd dig shell scripts or we'd occupy trenches which had been there from like the Iran-Iraq War and things like that. But then as we got further north into the oil field up near Al-Qurna, which is further north of the oil field, I should say, not north of Iraq, we started getting artillery fire on a fairly regular basis. I think over 2 or 3 days it was fairly regular. But I mentioned earlier in this interview that there had been a lull, in operations, kinetic operations for British military up to that point. Like I remember it being that. I remember hearing about someone in Tupara, different battalion, and we'd heard, there's that section of guys, and they were in a contact in wherever it was, Macedonia, where the fuck it was. Like, oh my god, wow,
it's a big deal.
Someone shot at them, and they shot back. You go, holy shit, and you think, wow, it'd be amazing. Wish we could do that. And then you fast forward to like Iraq, and you're getting artillery, and you're not really thinking anything of it. When everyone's going through it, and everyone's experiencing the same thing as a group at the same time, kind of immediately normalizes it. And no one's freaking out, which is good. So it kind of immediately normalizes it. But the thing about that was that we were so wet behind the ears that there was a motorbike that would come down the central road. I remember seeing it the first time. You could see it way off. There was two guys on the motorbike. It was Iraqis, and it turns out it was Iraqi artillery officers, or I assume almost an officer. And they would come down on the motorbike. They get the binos. They'd be like, look at this. And they get back on the motorbike. They go, yeah. And then, I don't know, half an hour later, whenever they got back into position, the artillery were coming. They weren't very good shots. No one got hit. Like, what the fuck? And we ended up putting an ambush in. I went out in the first ambush. We didn't get that. They didn't turn up on that. We went out through the night to where we thought they were going on the motorbike. They didn't turn out that morning. We withdrew back to the positions. Then the other platoon went out the following night, and they caught them at dawn, rasped them up, and there was no more artillery. But that was the first contact, was incoming artillery. Our tour, 3 Paras tour, there was super quiet. It's just we ended up being in places where either the enemy had already withdrawn, or there had been no enemy in the first place. Yeah. Like intelligence had been incorrect, or we had sort of overestimated how much resistance there would be. Super quiet. Even when we went and took Basra, we thought that right near the end, we thought that was going to be a very big battle in Basra, and zero. There was some little bit of fighting on the outskirts with the units, but for us it was zero. It was pretty underwhelming, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I remember getting told we were going. I was kind of excited. I think going to Iraq. I was thinking, yeah, going to war, amazing. Yep,
going to do it.
And yeah, going to war, amazing. But I think it was partly naivety, but I think it was also partly that I probably realised at that point that nothing had gone on. Nothing was going on. It was super boring. We'd done Northern Ireland, gone to the Falklands. The Falklands isn't even really a tour. I mean, it could be an operation tour if they really want to make it. We were doing defensive stuff there, legitimately so, because there'd been some Argentine shenanigans on the coast of the West Falkland Isles the year before, 2 years before, but nothing else had gone on. So he's like, holy shit, I may not have a real quiet career. And obviously I didn't.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
No, I didn't. Yeah. I mean, the once the war phase finished, we went into like a consolidation phase, afterwards, and we ended up patrolling the Iranian border, trying to stop weapons and money smuggling coming in over the border, which is quite fun. It's like wacky races. We were in soft-skinned vehicles, tooled up, and within small arms distance of the Iranian border and the Iranian watchtowers. It was always a bit. How close should we get? Yeah, that was good fun.
When do you go through sniper training?
That was the year after. Yeah, that was the year after.
So after Iraq, but before Afghanistan?
After Iraq, before Afghanistan, yeah. Okay. I think that's when things changed a little bit for me in terms of mentality, and those character traits I mentioned earlier, or the character flaws, or personality flaws, I should say, I mentioned earlier,
During sniper training, you kind of lost that?
No, I think the Iraq tour started changing things. Once you've experienced, being on the wrong end, or if you've experienced being in a two-way range, being shot at, being artillery, whatever it may be, and you perceive yourself to have performed adequately, you haven't panicked, you haven't frozen, you haven't fled, you've done exactly what you need to do. Or whatever rank or whatever job you're doing, it's just, that's everyone's aspiration, right? They don't want to be a flapper, as what we would call it in the UK, a flapper. And no one ever knows until they actually are in that situation. And in Iraq, I'd sort of prove that to myself. Okay, I don't panic, I don't run away. I'm pretty calm and composed. I can do what needs to be done. Huh. And then, so at the back of that tour, I got put forward for promotion. When I did a promotional course, learn the stuff, from the tactics to the leadership to the drill and all the rest of it. And I became a Lance Corporal after that, which was relatively. I was actually not that relatively quick, I suppose, a little bit quicker than usual. 2 years. It was after 2 years that happened. Yeah, it was pretty quick. And then 2004 was Ireland. And then I had a friend go across. He'd been invited to 3-Para Sniper Platoon the year before. He'd been in 3-Para a little bit longer than me. And the way it worked back then was you could sort of say, "Oh, I'd love to be a sniper and go to sniper platoon." You'd have to be invited. You'd have to be invited across, and that was on the provision that you passed the course in the first place. And the course is 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 8 weeks. So I got invited across in 2004. So did the island tour, came back from that, went on the sniper course. I think that was October, November, December. I think it was 8 weeks over those 3 months. Across those 3 months, and you operate with a lot more autonomy. Obviously, you operate with a lot more. You have to have a lot more reliance on your own decision making. You're making a lot of the decisions yourself, tactically, as opposed to being directed.
Yeah.
So I performed well on the sniper course, and then came back and joined the platoon, the sniper platoon, which at the time was at 23 strong.
Wow.
Yeah, 23 snipers maybe. Yeah, so not big but not small. I said it's about right for the unit. There was other snipers in 3-Para, but they weren't part of the platoon, so they would be in rifle companies, or these guys who they would have maybe done the sniper course because they'd had the opportunity to, or they've previously been part of the sniper platoon and they moved out of that to go in as part of the promotions and things. And the way 3-Para works is, and 2-Para, and I think most of the other units probably work, is it's a platoon of snipers, but in reality, on operations, on a missions, we basically get loaned out to different units, or we go and operate by ourselves or in pairs or in teams. But normally we'll get loaned out to the rifle companies, the rifle platoons or sections to bolster their capabilities on whatever mission they're going on. And that's how we work. So that was 2004.
You go in 2006, right? So you got a couple years before you get into Afghanistan.
Afghan was 2006, yeah. The first Afghan was 2006, yeah. So I went, after 2004, I went to Iraq in 2005, back to Iraq. We've done the Iraq invasion. Back to Iraq in 2005, we went back to the same area, like Basra area. We were operating out of Schreiber Log Base. And actually quite fun. I say quite fun. We were given a bit of free rein in that I think the capability of snipers was being realized. And the reason I say that is because up to that point, probably up to the 0203 point, and again, it's down to that lull in like operational tempo. You kind of forget the advantages and disadvantages and capabilities of different units, different types of soldier, different specialisms. And it's almost like you revert back to default. You just going through the motions of existing as a fighting force. Whereas when more operations and the tempo kicks up, you start realizing, hey, yeah, we need to pick this up because people get killed otherwise.
Yeah.
Or you don't do things very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in 2005, my team got, let me think about this in 2005. In fact, in 2005, I went on another promotion course. Yeah, I got promoted again in 2005, just before the Iraq tour. So I got promoted up immediately. I got a distinction on the course, which means you get promoted immediately as opposed to waiting until the next promotion board. So I went to Iraq as what we would call a full school corporal with my own team. But we got put into rifle companies. The rifle companies are short guys, so we went out there operating as rifle companies. I was a section commander in the rifle company, but we would go and do reconnaissance. So I was able to take my snipers and do like reconnaissance missions in different areas for different reasons, spotting smugglers and unusual activity and things like in suspect areas. And so that was quite fun. We weren't just having to do the standard rifle company stuff. We were actually able to deploy the sniper skills, which is good as well. I'd only been a sniper for like less than a year. It was really good, especially when you'd be mates.
For sure.
Yeah, and and when you trust people like that and you get to work, you get to do things that are a little bit different and pretty cool, it's okay. I'm enjoying myself now. So, that was 2005. Yeah,
can you take us to maybe that first firefight? I don't know if I assume it's sometime in 2006 because you got the siege that you go through, but what's your first firefight like? The 2A range where you're sending something back?
Yeah, the first firefight I was in, we had been tasked. We were based out of Camp Bastion, right? And this is relatively, I think it's probably about 6 weeks or maybe 8 weeks into Operation Herrick 4 for us, which was like our first fighting mission to Helmand Province for the British forces, of which the battle group was 3 Para battle group. So 3 Para was the main fighting force, and only acts and deaths on top as part of 16 Assault Brigade. And maybe 8 weeks in, 6 weeks in, things had started picking up. The first contact had happened to other guys had been in it, and some of my mates, and obviously the envy kicks in. And the first one I was involved in, we got tasked to go out to a town called Nowzad. And most of the civilians left. There was a little police outpost on the outskirts of the town, probably, I don't know, 400 meters away from the nearest walls of the town. It was on a little dirt mound, which is maybe 10 meters high, with some very crude rudimentary trenches around it. And then on top of it was a standard wooden shack, which doubled as a sentry tower for the police. And the Taliban had taken over the town. They were in there. The police couldn't get in there. They'd been booted out or killed. There was no one in there. And we got tasked to go out and support the police. We got dropped off in a couple of Chinooks. There wasn't many of us. There was myself and one of my sniper buddy, which is a guy called Jared Cleary. And we were working in pairs for this. There was a rifle section, or maybe 2 sections. So a section is 8 guys. So there's maybe 16 of them. And we had an anti-tank platoon with us as well, or an anti-tank section with us, I should say, with the Javelin, which was relatively new to us. You know the Javelin weapon system?
Yeah.
Awesome bit of kit.
I've heard people say when they use it, it works. Yeah.
Does work, yeah. And so we got deployed to the hill, basically, and it was just to go both them initially. Now, the Taliban at that point, they were, as much as we were feeling out what the lay of the land was like and where they were at and what their appetite for scrapping was, because at the time we didn't think it was going to go crazy kinetic as it did in general. They were at the same time feeling us out, and they ended up engaging us from a way off. And there was maybe 5 or 6 different firing points, small arms. And I remember the first shots coming in, and I reckon most people must experience this. And it's when you hear the crack and thump over your head. The first round goes over your head, and the first time you hear it, kind of go. You look up at the sky, you go, was that what I think it was? And that lasts for a split second until the other rounds, and you go, shit, yeah. And you hit the deck, shit, yeah. And you realize you're getting shot at. So yeah, that was the case for everyone. And because of the lay of the land there, the first problem was trying to spot where they were, trying to find where they were. And these guys weren't hiding very well. There was 2 guys literally on top of a roof. And the roof had no walls. It was just wide out in the open. Later in that contact, they would get taken out by a javelin. On a top attack. Yeah. Excellent piece of kit. That's the first time I saw a javelin fired in the hangar as well. It did well. And there was 2 or 3 firing positions off further into the town. It was quite hectic. You had relatively accurate fire coming in from probably 5 or 6 different positions, maybe 8 or 9 or 10 fighters, I would say, estimate, moving around. And we had all of us shooting back. It was quite loud. Myself and Jared did what snipers are meant to do. Really, we tried to identify the difficult targets to take out. And Stu was zoned in on he was a lone fighter, and he was going up on top of the roof. There was like a 2-foot high wall in the roof that he was hiding behind. He was firing shots over the top, but he weren't very, very good shots. He was just kind of spraying. It's just not great. And then he was like, duck down, you come back up, duck down, he'd come back up. And Stu was shooting, and I was spotting. I don't know how it works in the US actually, but over here, if we're working in pairs, then the more experienced sniper would generally, or the higher ranking sniper, literally in terms of rank, like war rank, will spot. And the least experienced or the lesser rank will shoot. Don't know if that works the same over there. Now in this instance, Stu was the more experienced, but I outranked him. So he was on the bolt action, which I didn't like. I wanted to be on the bolt action. I didn't want to be spotted. But he ended up taking on. And his first shot actually missed. The guy came over the top of the wall, and the first shot was like 6 inches too low. I don't know why. a 338 caliber round hit a mud wall right, 6 inches below this guy's face. It caused him a big fright. Dashed off the roof and went down to the side of the building where he thought he couldn't be seen, but where he was hiding was like in a little rat run. You could see him. Stu could see him. And Stu ended up taking him out. And I think that was Stu's first, actually. I think that was Stu's first.
What was that like for you? I know you're spotting, right? Maybe you're not the one pulling the trigger the first time, but like you're zeroing in on an individual for the first time, presumably, and taking a life. Is anything running through your mind, or is it just like, this is what we got to do? I'll worry about it later?
No, I've been asked this before about this kind of thing. I know Stu has as well. It doesn't run through your mind. I think there's no question in it, right? Because you're going through what you trained to do, right? And that includes, kill the bad guys, but it also includes a logical process of, should this individual be killed? Should they be shot? And so when you come to the point of, identifying a target, they wouldn't be a target if they weren't legitimate. So you get to the point of pulling the trigger, or like I said, identifying the target. Then there's no question to be asked. I think maybe the people who feel things like that are either killed someone they shouldn't have killed, or question the morality in general of what they're doing and whether they're going to be there. So the answer, I know it's a boring answer, but I didn't think anything about it. And I thought about that in the past, because it's not the only instance. And I'm glad I feel like that. I wouldn't want to have regrets.
Yeah. Because
I would then be questioning the morality of my decisions at the time. You ask me now what I think about those operations and our role, British role or Western role in those things, Iraq, Afghanistan in general, and may give you an answer people may not be happy about hearing. Does that mean I will go and change anything I did or regret anything I did? It does not. It does not. You act you act on the information and what you believe at the time. That's fine. So in this instance, that contact came to an end when the javelin hit the guy on the roof. That kind of was the end of it. Like, done. Like, okay, what the hell is that? I just fired it. So stop this, because those guys may not have not seen, as in the Taliban may not have seen that weapon system before. As soon as the lull came, the firing stopped, and the lull kind of lasted more than sort of 10, 15 seconds, and we realized, okay, it's not a lull. We've broken contact. Sit, let's stop. Everyone started laughing. Everyone on the hill started laughing. Like, it was like elation. It was like an adrenaline dump, laughter. Even the boss was laughing. You could hear it all around. And that was the only time I ever heard that. As in everyone doing it.
Yeah.
Of all the contacts I had down the line and the engagements I had down the line throughout that tour and others, you get some chuckles. I had some chuckles after some pretty hairy times, but not everyone together. And I think that was because at that point, relatively early on the tour, everyone had just been the first in Firefight. It was relatively straightforward. We come out of it unscathed and felt pretty good about it, I think.
Yeah.
And realized, holy shit, we just done one of those things we thought we'd never do in our career.
Yeah.
And there were many more to come.
So you come out of that kind of your first euphoric almost firefight. And then there's this later on, I don't know how much later, this siege. I've not talked to somebody who's been through this.
Oh, you're not aware of the siege?
But no, I've never interviewed somebody who's been a part of it. And so I'm curious, could you walk us through what this thing?
It's an unusual one, to say the least. And I kind of try and work out, what should I really think of this? Because for a long time, I was like proud of my part there. It was like a pride in, I was in something that was like crazy, hostile, prolonged, unique, horrific, all those things. I was proud of having that experience, right? And I think in a strange way, because I think it's like a feather in your cap, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone was in tough stuff out there. And I think that for me was the toughest time I've ever experienced.
Wow. And this is Musa Qala, right? I mean, I'm pronouncing it correctly for people who are
Musa Qala. So I'm going to try and remember the build up to this. So, on that 06 tour, very frantic. Frantic's the right word. We had occupied we'd gone, taken hold of different locations. Sangin, Nauzad, Gereshk, Sangin, Nauzad, Gereshk, Kajaki, to name but a few. And in those areas, there wasn't just one base; there was often multiples of. And Taliban, as early on the tour, had gotten very connected with this, and it was consistent. Depending on which area you're in, it was you were in contact every day. If you're in Sangin, for example, you go out and patrol out the gate, you get across the open ground, and you get into the green area, and you were guaranteed to get bumped, guaranteed to get ambushed. It was a question of how well you responded to it, and you could get ambushed on the way out, get ambushed on the way in. Then you could go out and do an offensive action. So you're talking 2 or 3 times, maybe, out on the ground, or more. And that was pretty much the same for all of the places. Sangin was one of the worst. And Musa Qala was actually a place we hadn't intended to go into. Musa Qala is a town further north of the Sangin Valley, further north of Sangin town. So it was like the deepest we'd gone, unintentionally. And what had happened, it's a town, a district centre, and right in the middle of it, it was a very, very dense town. And right in the middle of it was like this spire. And the district compound, which is where the police were holed up and the leaders. Now, the Pathfinder platoon, they had been in the vicinity of Musa Qala on the high ground on the opposite side of the wadi, for want of a better phrase, driving past one day. And the district compound was under attack from the Taliban. The Taliban had besieged the town. The police and the local police and the officials in the centre, and the Pathfinders went in to basically help them out. What the Pathfinders quickly discovered, they got in there really easy, but it's a really difficult place to get out of. If you were going to pick, if you were like as part of leadership training, command training, and you got a map of Musa Qala, and you said to the junior leader, "Hey, stick a pin on that map where you think the worst possible place to defend is," and you put a pin in the district compound every time, because there was between the compound walls. I mean, it was maybe 500 meters square, if that. Various buildings inside it, but the town itself, the buildings and the shops and the town itself, the walls of those joined straight onto the district compound wall. So you could literally walk to the compound wall without being seen by a sentry. You could get there. There was a mosque that joined onto the walls, which had tunnels. It was just a nightmare. Pathfinders went in to help out, discovered it was a problem, and the Taliban knew the lay of the land, and they besieged Pathfinders, and the Pathfinders couldn't get out, right? So my first experience in Musa Qala was a battle group operation, a huge operation to bolster the Pathfinders, to get the Pathfinders out, put a mortar section there, because we decided we were going to keep that ground. Put a mortar section in there. I think a team of Royal Irish were going in, and some Danish were going in there. And that was a battle group operation. So the whole of anyone who could spare for 3 power went in, saturated the body, saturated the area, secured the main road up to the gate of the district compound, and then got the guys in and got the other guys out. Fast forward a few weeks, and the same has happened again. These guys are stuck in there. We can't get any supplies in there. You can't land helicopters because it's so hot. There's no HLS. It isn't covered by the Taliban, and it was getting pretty dire. The situation there was getting pretty dire. Oh, they also had a sniper issue, and there's been a couple of headshots there, as in British casualties, and so that threat going on. It's just a real problem. Where I came in is they decided that they were going to bolster it up even more. They were going to put a section of powers in, 2 sections of powers in there, so 16 powers. They were going to put an element command in there, so a company commander, a major from the powers. And we landed. We ended up getting a helicopter in there. How they set the scene for getting a helicopter in, I don't know. But we went in on a heli. It was dusk. And I think they must have had a lot of aircraft, Apache up, probably a couple of Apaches, I'm assuming. So I'm trying to work out now why the Taliban were resistant to attacking that, but it must have been the air cover up. Later on, the air cover would be a real problem, as in lack of. So we landed into there, dusk, dashed off the Chinook, and Jared and I went in with the OC and the Sergeant Major, and we ended up basically first thinking, hey, you're going to take in that room, stick your kit in there. And all hell broke loose, just as in contact. But it was The noise is unbelievable. There was at that point there was 88 of us in there in total, and the noise is unreal, like nothing I'd ever heard of, and nothing I've heard in terms of attack. We went outside. We didn't know the lay of the land. We hadn't been given a brief. And we given anything, just pitch black. We grabbed our weapons, grabbed our belt kit.
Oh, it's at night.
Yeah, at night.
Oh.
We landed it, and it was pitch black, and it was and the Taliban were attacking from three sides, just as not as the sun had gone down, but as it literally got dark. And we got to the high ground and it was just the first thing we were trying to do was to work out who was friendly, who was foe, because there were sentry positions everywhere. You had the Afghans, and you never knew what the Afghans are doing, if they're firing the right way or not. There was one sentry position where we figured out they were firing out. We figured out that was a police sentry position. And forgive me, I can't remember if they were police or army, but Afghan police position. There was sparks flying every time this guy fired. What transpired the next day is this guy had an AK-47 with a bent barrel, but he didn't bother him because we couldn't get a replacement. So he just fired this thing. There was sparks flying everywhere. He wasn't hitting anything, right? But we went out. Yeah, we went out that night, and as quickly as it started, it was over. It wasn't a long one, and which was pretty good because we spent the entire time trying to work out the fuck was going on. Like, didn't know anything. It's like in the dark trying to work out who's what. It was crazy. It was crazy. Immediately when we got there, I remember when about a week, no, 2 weeks later, when we had a lot of casualties, and we had another section come in, and their first night was worse. I remember talking to the section commander, a guy called Brian Price. He gone, same thing had happened. It all kicked off. At this point, Jared and I fully bedded in, and we were up on a building called the Alamo, engaging. And Brian had gone running into a sentry position to check on his one of his guys in the right sentry position, and they got hit by an RPG. He'd been there for 10 minutes, and he got blown straight out, because they could get so close. They were just complete superiority over us. They could get to the walls and they could throw grenades over. It was almost embarrassing how difficult it was to defend. The only saving grace is that we didn't choose that position.
What's it like in the position you're in? Just real quick, like, how far are the targets you're looking at? It sounds like they're right on top of you. So, like, from a sniper position, how much flexibility, freedom to maneuver? Like, how far are the shots you're looking at?
Jared and I would put ourselves in a position where we had a length to deal with. The areas where they could get right to the walls and were within meters, there were multiple sentry positions for those. So we wouldn't concern ourselves with those. So generally, the distances we were dealing with were anything from 200 meters as potential fire locations up to 900, 800, 900, I'd say. Yeah, 800, 900. They ended up stopping attacking at night. I don't think they realized how strapped we were. We were running out of ammunition. Just go back a step. The situation with the battle group at the time was we had basically extended too far. Rephrase that. In hindsight, we extended too far. We extended far enough if the Taliban hadn't put up much of a fight, which was what we expected them not to do. And because they were so ferocious everywhere we were, they would attack multiple different towns, multiple different people at the same time. And so very little air power, very little, not air power, really superiority in terms of firepower, but in terms of troop carrying capacity, very limited. And so we wouldn't be able to ship troops around very much, and we wouldn't be able to get a lot of supplies in very easily. And Musa Qala being the northernmost and the most dangerous HLS, you want to call it that, grass patch HLS to go and land in, they were very reluctant to land there because they didn't want to lose a helicopter. They'd already lost one earlier on the tour, and they didn't want to lose another one. And they got to the point where the RAF didn't want to fly in. They wouldn't fly in. The only time they were flying is if we had a P1, and that's that was the only time they did end up coming in. We were down to like a handful of mortar rounds. Small arms wasn't too bad. 338 ammunition wasn't great. Food was very little rations left. I was eating potatoes. We ended up getting sacks of potatoes. I lived on a potato diet for the best part of 2 weeks. Fried potatoes, with some oil. Potatoes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But it was the intensity of it. So they ended up stopping attacking at night, and I think I don't actually know why they did that, but throughout the day, you'd be talking upwards of six attacks a day, of which multiple would be complex attacks. And for the uninitiated, a complex attack is multiple different types of weapon systems, multiple flanks, usually anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. Those engagements could last minutes, or they could last upwards up to an hour, sometimes longer, often shorter. But it's a different beast when you are completely at the mercy of the enemy. There was nothing we could do to suppress them other than shoot back. Like, and what I mean by that is normally you'd have the advantage of being able to go and patrol out, do offensive actions on foot, gain ground, hold ground, dominate ground. I mean, we weren't able to do that. And the reason we weren't able to do it is because we didn't have the manpower to be able to go out, put in an effective operation whilst leaving enough manpower in the district compound to defend it, and handle any casualties we would inevitably get. It was a real problem. So you basically just had to wait for them, which is what happened. In a 12-day period, we took 55 casualties, and that was a combination of British and Afghan. There was 3 fatalities there. There was 6 evacuations. There were 3 British fatalities, I should say. There was Afghan fatalities as well. We didn't have to heli them out, but it's pretty demoralising when it's just completely being ground down. And that's the first and last time I ever felt fear there was there, and it was that helplessness. And it wasn't a general thing. I felt that at one point. And what they had done was, because they weren't able to beat us very effectively in the small arms attacks. As we know in these operations in Iraq and other places, the enemy gradually changed their modus operandi from shooting at us. They know we're really good at shooting back, killing them. They changed it to like more indirect weapons, and they did it the same in Musa Qala, and they actually deployed a mortar team on a daily basis and started using that more often. And over a few days, they started bracketing us with the mortar team, and eventually every round they fired would land inside the compound.
Oh.
And it was a real problem. We were taking casualties doing that, and it got to the point where the OC Adam Jarrett said that if there's a mortar attack, then everyone takes hard cover. No one wants to go out. Everyone takes hard cover except for 2 people, and those 2 people were Jared and I. And the rationale being is that we were best equipped to try and spot these guys. Obviously, not spot the mortar team, because you wouldn't be able to see them. They wouldn't be in line of sight. But try and spot the guy who's somewhere out there in that 360-degree arc of kilometers of ground. Because he wasn't going to be in the town, telling the mortar team where to fire. And so,
what would have been the way for you all to get out of there? Like, was the decision that you're going to hold it? Is that what I heard you say? Like, you're going to reinforce to kind of maintain that position, or the idea was you get enough firepower to get everybody out?
Initially, it was to hold it. It was to hold it. It was to hold it, which is why they put the more troops in there. So in that battle group operation I spoke about, that could have been like pull everyone out.
Yeah.
It was okay. We'll put more in there. We'll hold it. We're there now. We'll kind of stay there. Now, as time went on, we ended up it basically got past the point. No, it got to a point where the unit coming in after us to replace 3 para battle group was the Marines. I can't remember which commando unit it was, but it was the Marines coming in. And all I can assume, I've got a guy coming on my show a bit who is the sergeant major there to talk about this, to sort of bat off our own memories about things. But I'm assuming that they said, we don't want it. Like, it's too far, it's too many, we can see what's going on here, we don't want it. So get you guys out. Now, at that point, it got to a point where, as you know, the unit was getting ready to leave theatre. Now, what happens when you start to leave theatre is you start sending kit back and troops back. It got to the point where we couldn't be pulled out. They couldn't get us out. They couldn't mount a battle group operation. They didn't have the troops to do it. The Marines coming in weren't ready to deploy because it's a handover period, and they have to get all their kit in, and they have to get all the normal stuff. Not the Marines' fault, And they physically couldn't get us out. We were still in there when 3-Para were back in the UK. We were still in there, which was not the greatest feeling in the world, I'll be honest. Because it begged the question, how the fuck do we get out? And guys were really at their wits' end. There was our light electronic warfare team, loot team, in there. In that battle group, there was only 20 of them in total, 20 loot guys. And what amazing dudes, right? And on that tour, they lost 5. 5 of the 20 were killed. 5 of a small team, and they lost a quarter of them. And 2 of those, 1 or 2 of those were where we were. So those guys were just fragged. People were really ground down, and understandably so. Like besieged. We wouldn't have called it at the time a siege, but we came to call it after, completely stuck in there. So, unbeknown to us, as being the guys who were at the OC and the Sergeant Major, negotiations had started up with the Taliban to decide what was to happen with the town and how we would get out. And the Taliban basically said, okay, you get you guys out, we'll let you guys out. In fact, we'll help you get them out. And in return, you don't come back into Musa Qala, British forces, and we won't take it over.
Wow.
And, obviously bollocks.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is we couldn't stay there indefinitely. Yeah. And the Taliban had all of the bargaining chips on their side. We were stuck and we needed to get out. They knew how long we'd be there. They're not stupid. They know the rotations. So one morning, the gates opened up, and a bunch of, I forget how many, but we would call them jingly trucks, so cattle trucks, driven by Afghans. And up to this point, we'd had a ceasefire. There'd been a ceasefire agreed while these negotiations were going on. And they honoured it, and we honoured it. And these cattle trucks turned up, driven by Afghanis, basically approved by the Taliban. The Taliban had organised these cattle trucks, and the cattle trucks turned up, and we all, what's going on? And we had a hint we were leaving anyway, because the night before we'd been told, through the night, the dark, we'd been told to get rid of the sandbag, dismantle all the defences so the Taliban couldn't use them and the rest of it. We climbed the back of these cattle trucks, and we were driven out by the Taliban or their mates in the cattle trucks, and through the town, the route through the town that we drove, or we were driven by the Afghans, was picketed by Afghanis, elders, Taliban. It's like as a show of faith. Hey, we're not going to blow you up, because we'd be blowing our own guys up on the side of the road if we do it as well. And at the head of the column was a Hilux with the Taliban commander in there, with the OC in there. Yeah. We driven out. It was like a 2-hour, 3-hour drive into the desert, through the town, into the desert. Couldn't believe it. And the thing was, though, I developed insomnia up to that point. I wasn't able to sleep. And I just put that down to acute stress. That's what I can't describe any other reason why we would be that. And I say it's understandable, to be honest. Yeah. But as soon as I got in that cattle wagon, because like Jared was in the back, other guys were in the back, and I got in the front with the Afghanis, pistol ready to go under my thigh, because I didn't know who these guys were. I didn't know what was going to happen. And as soon as we started driving, I got tired. And I felt like sleeping. It was a kind of almost relief, but you're also sitting in the soft seat. Yeah. And wagon trundling on. That was the hardest few hours of my life, trying to stay awake in the front. Honestly, just trying to keep my eyes open. It was horrific. Joe was out into the desert. And at a point, we all stopped. We all dismounted off the cattle trucks, and then walked over a bit of open ground to a couple of Chinooks sitting there waiting for us, and took us back to Camp Bastion. Yeah. And at the time, we thought nothing of it, to be honest. We were just relieved, man, to get out there. I'd been in there at that point 2 months. The other guys had been in there 2.5, 3 months, and a long time to be getting totally done over by the enemy, which in reality is what it was, which is why I mentioned earlier. So what should I really think about this? Is there any pride to be had there? Is this actually an embarrassing situation that happened, or is it a mix? We got back to Camp Bastion, and we were told, you won't talk about this, you won't mention it. As far as you're concerned, this didn't happen.
Wow.
I remember that was outside the cookout, outside the DFAC in Bastion, and we didn't talk about it. For the first I saw of it being made public, so to speak. It was on Wikipedia, 2009, 3 years later. And there's even guys in 3 Power didn't know about it because, it's not something we hid and we were in conversations with people. We wouldn't go broadcasting it. We'd have conversations, exchanging battle stories and stuff. And, but, 2006, 21st century, and the way you get out of a theatre of war is because the enemy let you out. In fact, the enemy drove you out. It was probably that's probably the toughest time I had, actually. That moment of fear I told you about was, I said to you, Jared and I's job would be to go out at that point and get to high ground. I'd run into the ops room and say, where do you think they're coming from? Where does it sound like they're coming from? They give an indication. We decide where we're going to go in the compound and try and get an understanding of where the spotter may be. We go running out into these mortars landing, and we'd stand in the doorway. He'd be stood behind me, the sandbagged sort of zigzag going out, chicane type of affair. And I turned around and give him a little nod. And it was a nod like, are you ready? It was also a nod, kind of a nice knowing you. Because we just,
wow.
You do these things enough. You're wearing down your odds of survival. You go running out into mortars raining down to a camp multiple times a day. You're kind of wearing down, you're really cutting it fine, and just got to the point of understanding, we could be fucked, where you go out. But even then, we stopped going out because there was one particular incident where two guys got killed by mortar, direct strike with a mortar. We went up to this particular building inside the compound where they weren't replying on the radio. We went up to go there to try and spot take this guy out. When we got there, the two guys, they were dying. And so the OC was like, we can't lose anyone else. We certainly can't lose the snipers. To stop those going out, which meant that the next time the mortars came in, Jared and I were also helpless. And we just had to sit there. We sat under the archway of the door.
Was that even worse?
Horrific. That's what I mean about the fear. We were sitting there, and I thought, these rounds could hit this building. There's nothing we can do about it. We're just going to sit here and hope it doesn't hit. That's the first time I've ever felt helpless like that in a battle situation ever. It was the first and last time I've ever felt like that. Never want to feel like it again, because it's almost like you can feel this like panic there, which wants to come up. I could be fucking killed here. And there's absolutely nothing. I can't run away. I can't magic some amazing defenses on top. I can't do anything else. Just gonna have to hope it's not my time. And horrific, just horrific, And I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone, to be honest. I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone.
I mean, how close did you and Jared become after that? I mean, I got to imagine like every day.
Close, yeah. Yeah, close, yeah. Yeah, close. Yeah, we close. Yeah, we're still close today. Funnily enough, I was talking actually to the sergeant major that I went up to see him. They haven't seen him in 10 years, and we were talking about it. And Jared has almost completely suppressed. He would disagree with this, right? Jared has almost completely suppressed the worst aspects of that time in Musa Qala. And I've discovered this a few years ago when we were talking, me, him, and a couple of others, and his recollection of things was wildly different, which is not abnormal or traumatic circumstances, but he doesn't remember anything being bad, which couldn't be any further from the truth. I was talking to Sergeant Major about this, and he's what? I said he doesn't. I don't think he remembers what it was like. And I think he's literally pushed it aside, which is, I don't know, this God mechanism. I mean, he's fine. He's a really chilled out, relaxed guy living a loving life. And that's how that's how you want to remember and not remember it. It's fine by me, but we became close. He's a good guy. We were lucky on that tour with the snipers anyway. He was just, we had really good guys. We had really good guys attached in the team, and we actually got bolstered up. We wanted more numbers. We wanted more snipers going on to that tour for obvious reasons, and we couldn't get them. So we got bolstered up with basically reservists and a mix of reservists, a couple of reservists. We would call them reservists, and a couple of brand new privates from rifle companies. Literally, had been in Three Power a few months. They gave us those guys. We were lucky in that every single one of them. And some of them were sniper material, maybe. Others absolutely were not. But every single one of them brought something to the party. It's kind of the first time I learned a lesson. And there's every single person has value somewhere. And you only seem to discover that when someone's forced onto your team, and you have to, okay, we have to work with this. I don't like it. He's not interesting. He hasn't got the experience, but every single one of them had something to bring to the party. And that wasn't always something soldiering wise. There were two LNG gunners we got given, and really young, real wet behind the ears. And one of them was great on the LNG. He was superb. The other one was average on the LNG, but his personality was amazing. He was just, so you had these guys be working, and it's a lesson I took forward with me. Okay, everyone's got something. You've got to find it. Not everyone is a total moron,
Yeah, man.
Well, that's one place. And you say, would you go back? I think, no, I wouldn't go back.
No, I mean, that sounds rough. Even the exit there just sounds like, storybook material. Hugh, the other thing that the individual who reached out to me said to ask you about, I don't know if it was 2008 or 2010, but said that you got an award for gallantry at some point. I don't know what the context is, and you're probably tired of telling it, but I'd love to hear.
I know he's asking these questions. I know he's asking.
Okay, all right.
I know he's asking.
I need to protect my sources.
Yeah, that was 2008. So in 2008, we were conducting strike operations out of Kandahar. It was real fun. So when I say we were conducting strike operations out of Kandahar, it was 3 para in Kandahar, and we would basically go out on relatively short missions looking for high value targets, either to kill or capture. Sometimes it'd be a day, hours. Sometimes it'd be a few weeks on the ground, depending on what we're trying to do. Sometimes we go out in support of SF operations or US operations. One of the areas we went to was we went to bolster 2 para who were out at the same time as us in that tour, and they were in a fob called the company we went to bolster were in a fob called Fob Inkerman, which was probably the tastiest, the most kinetic fob of all of them that 2 para had at that time. A huge amount of green zone to cover. The Taliban were very active there, and we went out. We put a company in there, and we went out to basically add an additional fighting force to them. And we were fresher. We hadn't been ground down by months in Inkerman, so we were able to go a bit deeper into the green zone. So we ended up on a mission into the green zone, quite deep in one day in the afternoon. And my team, so I had my sniper team there, and it was 5 people. The company had split into, obviously, there were 3 platoons, and they were sort of pepper potting forward, 2 at a time, through a village. Somehow, the Taliban had managed to get themselves between the 2 platoons and on the outskirts. Now, I'm not sure how they did it, because the platoons weren't that far apart. I think maybe they were in culverts or they were underground. I'm not sure. And they opened up real close quarters, and quite a lot of them, and took us really by surprise. Took the 2 right platoons really by surprise. The way I was working the snipers was, we would move with those front platoons, so it'd be 2 of us with one of the platoons, 3 with the other platoon, but we would occupy the high ground and try and scan forward for enemy fires. Now, when this happened, they were obviously right amongst us, and we had, so on my side of the compound I was on, my 2 guys, Jared and another guy called Matt Tunro, who sadly got killed, ended up with the SAS, got killed in Syria, sadly about 5 years ago. And he, in fact, working with Delta, and between our compound and the other compound where the other team was, the other platoon was trees. You couldn't see them. It was like out of line of sight. Long story short, the shock of that initial contact from in between us took some of the guys by surprise, and because it was so close quarters, they literally couldn't get their heads above the parapet to be able to fire back at the enemy. You're shooting down at the enemy in the culverts there, and also the Taliban started engaging from a tree line off to my flank, our team's flank, at the outside. So we had fire coming from within, fire coming from without, and we couldn't see the other platoon to make sure we weren't engaging our own guys. Yeah, it was I don't think the Taliban intended it that way.
It was just luck.
Yeah. It's just luck. Yeah, just luck. But I set my two guys onto the tree line and onto another building where we were engaged from. In fact, the other building we were engaged from, the Taliban fighter popped up from there and he had full uniform. And I don't mean police uniform. He was wearing a camouflage shirt and a helmet. I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen that before. He was pretty close though. He was a bit of a moron. He was about 50 meters and Matt took him out. So I set my two guys there on to watch that tree line because that was pretty accurate fire coming from there. I'm pretty sure that was a marksman sniper of some sort, someone with a bit of sense around him. Then I took a knee and I was trying to work out what my other team was doing, what the fuck was going on, to try and get a handle on things. We're talking, we maybe seconds into this now, maybe 20 seconds into this. You know how quickly things are going.
Yep.
Things go. And I looked to my rear and that I spotted that wall on the roof where our guys were, where they literally couldn't get their heads up above the parapet to fire back. And it was just the fire coming on the top was overwhelming. RPG came over at one point as I was running across. And the reason I ran across was because I think from experience before, the team there who were like pinned down, they were not the most experienced. I knew which unit they were part of, with a subunit within 3-power, and they were not the most experienced. And some of the guys were brand new, and I think there were a bit of shock going on there. And one of the GPMG gunners was pinned down himself in the middle of the roof, couldn't get up because of the fire coming in. And we needed to regain the initiative, otherwise we start losing casualties. If you let it go on like that, the Taliban is going to start maneuvers. So I basically ended up rallying the troops, for want of a better word. I left my guys, came out of cover, ran across the roof. I picked up the GPMG as I ran across. RPG went off overhead as I was going, loud bang, and got the guy and said to the guy, "Get up, follow me, come with me." Go over to the wall. Went down behind the wall with the GPMG, give the GPMG back to him, shouted to the guys who were like crouching down and said, "Get up, start fucking firing." And I stood up and started firing. And then knelt back down and he was still there to get up, start fucking firing. Over to started engaging. And it's like as soon as you start engaging back, it immediately puts the enemy off firing anymore, especially if you hit them. Right? So it puts a stop in it. Up to that point, it had free reign. So I spent my time riding around the roof there, getting the guys from the rifle, the rifle section with and the team basically engaging back, regaining the initiative, which also allowed the compound opposite to get a handle on what was going on, identify with the enemy, because I could communicate it across there, and then get back over to Jared and Matt. And that's it. That's it in a nutshell. It's one of those. You got a Gallantry award for it, but you're kind of doing your job.
Yeah.
I don't see anything grand in it, and I probably boiled it down to a much smaller thing than what it may have actually seemed to other people on the day. But to me, it was pretty rapid necessity.
Yeah.
And experience. And I think if you're not a commander who's going to be willing to do that, then you shouldn't be a commander.
But there's probably something there about you just need somebody to lead and show you in the heat of the moment. I mean, I think you hear that so often in training, but that is like the real world application of I'm just going to do it.
It could have gone real wrong. I could have been killed. It could have gone real wrong.
Yeah.
And then there's no fucking Gallantry award then. That's dead Hugh, and you still got the same problem you had before he was dead. He hasn't fixed anything. It's kind of that risk versus reward element, isn't it? But I think the first tour really set me up for that understanding of you need to act quick, act hard and fast, aggressive, immediately, calculated, not craziness, calculated. Identify where the enemy are and overwhelm them immediately with superior firepower, which you can do almost all of the time in these situations, almost all of the time. And it's even more important when you're operating in somewhere like Afghanistan or Iraq, where it's counterinsurgency, because the enemy can always move faster than you.
Yeah.
Can always move faster than you. They've always got resources to hand. They don't have to worry about getting back to camp or staying out overnight with all the kit and all the ammunition, all the rest they need to carry, and they're used to that area. They know the area. So it's even more important. But
probably what you did for those 4 or 5 guys, like if that was their first real contact and they just sat there behind the wall and nothing happened, like they didn't engage, probably a very different experience next time they're in a firefight. That's
I think I think with them it was less like shock, and it wasn't freeze. It was more waiting to be shown what to do.
Yeah.
And again, I think that comes with the initiative, comes with experience, and especially if it could well have been the first contact. I doubt it. But again, that close.
Yeah.
It's a pretty frightening thing. Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone should. A lot of people should got an award there, but
no,
not just me. But
so Hugh, you've done H-Hour, right? For how many years now?
5, I think. 6.
What got you started on it?
I wanted to communicate useful information to people who may need it. If I want to boil it down in a sentence, it's taken me 6 years to work out how to answer that question you just asked, right? And you're the first person I couldn't answer to. That's what I wanted to do in reality. I started up in 2019. I left the military in 2011. Between 2011 and 2019, I had some pretty miserable times, turbulent times, for a bunch of reasons I won't go into now.
Yeah.
And which greatly affected my mental health. As one example, as many people get affected by. And I learned a lot of there's stuff I learned going through those difficult times. I thought, God, man, if I'd known this before, I wouldn't have had those difficult times. If I'd known these, if I'd heard someone else talking about X, Y, or Z thing, and sometimes it was, some things are like just stuff to do with profession and work and industry and things like that. So that's why I started up. I started up to chat as you and I are chatting now. And I've really enjoyed this, by the way.
Yeah.
As you and I are chatting now with other guys and girls with like-minded people, similar backgrounds, is try and seek out the stories and the information, the insights that could inform me and help others in the process. That's how it started out. Yeah, that's why I started it. I think it serves that purpose.
Hard question here. It's like choosing your favorite child, but are there a couple that you point people to? Like you've got a big catalog. Like, would you say?
Oh, it depends what you want. Depends what you're after. So if people want to talk about PTSD or TBIs, hot topic at the moment, I point them to a couple of episodes there. TBIs are a hot topic over in the States in a minute, and especially TBI related to PTSD and military. And there's actually an amazing guy. I recommend getting him on if you pique your interest. It's an American guy, a guy called Dr. Mark Gordon. And I think he's one of Rogan's physicians actually, but he is leading the research and treatment of into blast TBIs and PTSD related symptoms, and in fact he's also developed a methodology where you can supplement with natural supplements and basically reduce the likelihood of you being impacted like by PTSD or TBI when you go and, I don't know, stick a mouse hole charge on a door or whatever. I know he's working with US SF. So Mark Gordon, Mandy Bostwick is a British lady who he works with, number 99, for the TBI stuff. If you want psychedelics, I've interviewed a lot of psychedelics researchers on the subject of, mental ill health recovery. It depends what people ask for.
Perfect.
If you want some politics, there's a Nigel Farage interview in there.
Interesting.
Politics.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you, there's 2 questions I try to ask everybody at the end here, and then I'll get you out of here, Hugh. So one is, was there anything that you carried with you when you were deployed that had sentimental value, good luck charm, just something that somebody gave you that you wanted to have on you?
Yeah. On 06, when I went out on that tour, before that tour, a person who was close to me at the time, a lady, had given me a guardian angel, silver guardian angel, quite big, and I had that taped to my dog tags when I went out. It was a little bit too big. A little bit uncomfortable sometimes. But I carry that with me, yeah. And I also carried St. Christopher. Not St. Christopher. St. Christopher.
Yeah.
Christopher? Yeah, St. Christopher.
Probably, yeah.
St. Christopher, yeah.
Do you have that on the seat?
St. Michael. No, St. Michael.
Oh, St. Michael.
Okay,
yeah.
The patron saint of, well, we say it's the patron saint of paratroopers. I think it's the patron saint of armed forces or something like that. St. Michael at the time.
Okay.
I was quite into those things at the time. Less so now. But yeah,
less so now.
That's what I carried.
Okay. And then, looking back, I know we didn't even scratch the surface on a lot of your stories and the time afterwards, but just looking back on those times, and you've alluded to it a little bit, people you lost, the fear, everything you went through. Would you do that again?
Almost all of it. Well, absolutely. As difficult and as challenging the times were during and after, reconciling some of the stuff and dealing with some of the stuff and just losing people in things I wasn't even involved in. I would. I like who I am today, and I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't have gone through those things, the good and the bad. And I've got 2 amazing daughters. I've got good people in my life, and I wouldn't have them if my life had been different beforehand. So I wouldn't want to risk changing any of it. No,
it's amazing.
And I wouldn't be here. Ryan, would I?
Yeah,
talking to you.
That's true. As crazy as that is. Hugh, where can people find you on social? We'll have everything in the description, but anything you want to point people to?
Yeah, anyways, the podcast, H Hour Podcast, charliecharlie1.com is the website, but just search for H Hour. I'm on X mainly at Hugh Keir, HughKeir. The website, the podcast, on my personal profile on X. Feel free to reach out to me. Hope you enjoyed it, and appreciate you giving me the opportunity, Ryan.
This is awesome. Thanks so much, Hugh. Yeah,
I've always got time for an Apache pilot.
I love it. Thanks for listening to this combat story. Hope you enjoyed this one with Hugh. Interesting character for sure. And I think for people who like combat story, you're going to appreciate H Hour, his podcast, of course. I had never heard, as you probably noticed, or had never really heard in depth about the siege that he was a part of. I had heard of it, but never somebody from it. And it was interesting to hear how he wrestled with the outcome of that, the aftermath, being driven out by the very people who were penning him in. And then how leadership may have perceived or asked people to handle that going forward. Very interesting, for sure. For those who would like to get our newsletter, you can go to combatstory.com/newsletter to subscribe. It's a weekly one that we send out that just has updates about episodes we're looking back on, what's coming up, some interesting history facts, maybe something I'm watching or reading, just to share out with you all who share similar interests. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Hope you appreciated this one. And wherever you are in the world, whether it's your week or weekend, of course, stay safe, y'all.